I just heard a good line that really makes you think, and that's what it's supposed to do. It has to do with a lot of what's on the news today, but I think that people might get a laugh out of it as well, and it should make you think. So you got a little boy, Ralph, and this is The Simpsons, by the way, so you might recognize the names. You got a little boy, Ralph. His father, Wiggum, who's a police officer, is in church with their church buddy, Flanders, who lives next door. So, they're in church. Flanders is trying to teach the word of God and trying to get more people to be good people and go to heaven. It starts out in heaven where God says, we just don't have any people coming up here anymore. We need to do something to get people to start coming up to heaven again because this place is a dead show. And literally, God plans a party and for everybody in heaven to show up, and nobody shows up. None of the millennials, none of the business owners, none of the CEOs, none of them show up because they're not there. And then God goes, we need to fix this. Nobody's coming to heaven anymore. Like nobody's coming to this bar or nobody's coming to this restaurant anymore. So he decides to enlist Flanders without his knowledge. Anyways, so Wiggum's son, and Flanders are all talking religion and who goes to heaven. Ralphie, Wiggum's son, turns to Flanders, who's preaching and has the Bible in his hand, and asks him a very good question. Do the people my daddy shoot and kill go to heaven? Now remember, Ralph's father is a police officer, and not quite competent police officer like a lot of police officers today. There are some great police officers I've met who take their duty seriously, and all they want to do is save lives, help babies, bring women back to life, like old ladies who might have passed out, just the simple stuff. When there's if somebody has a gun and they pull it, they would, pull their gun and shoot them and not just run out the door and call for backup. On an off day, you have good police officers out there who want to do good, and that's why they're police officer. But then you have some police officers who twist things and they act vindictive, powerful, and they sometimes like to push their power around because it gives them a rush. They also like to pick on the homeless for sure. There's a lot of cops who look at homeless as just like a roach on society, and they can just be thrown in the prison, killed, beat, lit on fire, whatever. I literally was lit on fire by a police officer in Lowell, Massachusetts. I was sleeping in my tent, and a police officer lit my tent on fire with a lighter. I come out with the plastic melting everywhere, and the cops laughing, walking away. It's not like I can do anything to them. And this happens all the time. I'm not the only homeless person that had his tent lit on fire while he was in it either. That was one cop doing that quite a bit. There was also slicing, there was beatings, there was even one cop that was taking prostitutes off the street, having sex with them, and then arresting them, or then getting drugs off them and releasing them. So there's a lot of crazy stuff going on with the police department. And Wiggum, in the show I'm talking about, in this church, is a police officer who's incompetent. Very incompetent, like a lot you see today. So his son asked him a question. Asked the priest a question. When my daddy shoots and kills those people, do they go to heaven? And then Flanders turns to him and says, well, if they were good people, yes. So most of them probably went to heaven. Meaning that Wiggum was such an incompetent police officer that he's shooting innocent people who have done nothing wrong. And it made me laugh because it's so true. A lot of people getting shot and killed on the news have not done any super sinful crime that could not be forgiven. They could have easily been forgiven, and some of them haven't even been proven that they committed a crime. Some of them might just be walking down the street. The cop wants to harass them, slams them to the ground, starts choking them out, and then he dies. And this has been going on for a long time. We're not talking about black people either. Yes, the one I just described was a black person on the news. But I've watched plenty of poor people get beaten. And that's the real thing. That African American gentleman who was on the news, Floyd, he did not get killed because he was African American. He got killed because he was poor. Any other poor person that day who was that big of a person, stature, would have had the same result. But if you had a wealthy individual who had just came out of an Escalade or a, I don't know, Cadillac, that's not going to happen to him because that cop is afraid of that money. And that's the real problem. See, there are more poor black people than poor white people. So if you really want to know why there's more poor black people getting hurt, killed, beaten, whatever, it's because they're more poor. There are more poor black people than there are white people. Well, actually, that's not true in every city, but in general, in the United States, there are more poor black people than white people. And it's not because they don't want to work. It's not because they're any different than us. No, it's because we've built the system to keep them down for centuries. And they're just coming up now. Now, if you're arguing in your head, oh, well, no, it's racism with Floyd. It's racism. It's racism. Oh, yeah? Tell me, what happens to rich, billionaire black people when they get arrested? Do they get choked out on the ground? Do they end up with beatings and black eyes? Do they get lit on fire? Do they get false charges or made up stories? No. No. They get billion-dollar attorneys, they get a cell, they get treated very politely by the police officer. I mean, just look at O.J. Simpson. Those police officers were so happy to pull him over. Oh, look, a football player that is some. Oh, I love this guy. So, yeah, they get attention, they get treated better. Nobody's putting their hands on O.J. Simpson. No cop is doing that. They're not stupid enough to. But some African-American gentleman who lives in the shelter in the other town down the street from O.J. Simpson, the guy who lives in a rundown apartment that has roaches and bed bugs and rats and stuff, yeah, that black person will be beaten, maybe even framed, maybe even lit on fire. And that's because this is what the police do. They take innocent people, not all police, by the way. There are so many good police officers out there who want to help your mother, grandmother, father, brother, just help out and do the right thing. But then you have other ones who that's not their purpose. They have no compassion for the human body or the human person or the human condition. They only have compassion for money. That's it. You got money, they got compassion for you. They'll give you a break. They'll get you a glass of water in your cell. I bet if O.J. Simpson asked for a glass of water in his cell that night, he got it. Meanwhile, if somebody who's poor and not outstanding and not wealthy or just somebody who lives in a shelter or a rundown apartment but works 2 jobs, 50 hours a day, keeping the wheels of commerce running, somebody who works with gasoline or oil companies or anything individual, even a hospital job. Maybe you clean the bedpans at the hospital. Maybe you're the person who washes the sheets at the hospital. But you're treated shitty because you're walking out of a cheap drug den apartment where all your neighbors are crackheads. You come down and a cop starts harassing you, even though you're a hard-working nurse or you're a hard-working gas station attendant who doesn't use drugs, but none of that matters because you're poor. Every poor person is on the chopping block today. And that's the real realization that everybody needs to make. Because I hear on the news all this race stuff, but I've looked at it straight, and I have pulled apart the information, and it is not 100% racism. Yes, there is racism in this country, but a lot of these officers who are killing these black people on accident or beating or lighting people on tents, they're not doing it because of the color of your skin. They're doing it because you're poor. Floyd was a poor person, so he got the rough end of it. He got choked out, just like a lot of people who are homeless choked out. I watched a kid, 16 years old, get shot in the shoulder. Now, that one was probably deserved, but he didn't pull a gun on anybody. He just refused to surrender. But he also ran. There was gunfires in the area. Cops were asking around. This kid ran. He ran, got cornered, no gun on him. The cops said to stand down and turn around and get on the floor. He refused. They shot him in the shoulder. And then they said, well, that's what happens when you do that. And I couldn't believe it. I figured that somebody would just run in and smash him against the wall. But because there was fires shot, but nobody saw a gun. There was no gun. They never found the gun. The cops were looking for the gun for months, asking everybody if they'd seen a gun for months after that. So they never saw a gun. They don't even know, well, maybe they do afterwards, but at the moment, they didn't even know if this kid was the shooter. All they know is he's running away and refusing to stand down. And this kid was like a Spanish mulatto mix. He was like half white, half black. So I'm sure he's scared to death of these cops to begin with, because he doesn't know what's going on. Even if he was the criminal that fired the gun, he's now ditched it. He doesn't think he's going to get shot in the shoulder. But in this case, in the shooting of the shoulder, I would say that's pretty justified, because there were shots fired. They asked him questions and he ran away. He's cornered and he's refusing to stand down, and he might have a weapon still on him. So in that case, I feel like the cops were a little justified, but they all have tasers on them. They all have weapons on them that are non-lethal. Nobody has to shoot them in the shoulder with a bullet. That's a little overkill for a 16-year-old. But one thing I did ask later, a week later, I was talking to Kevin Garno. He says that the officers do that to teach you a lesson. They'll shoot you and light you on fire to teach you a lesson. Well, what's the lesson? That I'm stuck sleeping outside with nowhere to go and you don't like it? Because that's why I was lit on fire. See, the message I got in my tent was that if I continue sleeping in these woods that are public area, they're not businesses and nothing, no. These are out in the woods, public areas, but a lot of them are well known by the officers because people continuously build 10 cities in Lowell. Every year it moves, every year it's a new location, and they've used up all the locations and the officers know all of them. Well, I like a location by myself. At the time my tent was lit on fire, there was only 2 tents down there, and the other one was really far away. Well, he lit me on fire because he wanted me not to be sleeping there anymore. He doesn't want to have to wander through the woods, but that's his job. If I was there or not, he would have to do that. If you really don't want to wander through the woods looking for homeless people and asking them to find a different spot for their tent and move the whole tent city again, then maybe, just maybe, try to do something compassionate about the homeless problem. Especially the people willing to work. I've seen roofers spending 10, 12 hours a day on a roof. I've seen people doing all different types of stuff while homeless and not get out of it. I have seen people literally bust their asses, and not only that, I'm not sure if a lot of people realize this, but the homeless have more theft stolen from them in wages and work wages than any other demographic. There are so many jobs, business owners, just random people who will ask you to do, hey, can you roof for me? And then you spend 10 hours roofing, and then they throw you to the street and they don't pay you. Or they tell you, hey, I want you to rake my yard for $20. And then you rake the yard for $20 and they throw you away. And if you ask for the money up front, they tell you no, because you're probably just going to run off and not do it. Or they'll give you some excuse that you're a drug addict and they can't trust you. But then they refuse to pay you after you do a good job, after the whole thing is spotless, after the manhole is emptied. And this happens a lot to homeless people. A lot. I've had it happen only once, actually twice to me. I'm owed $500 from the New England Wire Company due to an ex-girlfriend's father who got me the job, and then as soon as the check came in, he threw her out, and then I had to follow her. So that was the whole thing. And then there was another time I did construction. I ended up just tearing down drywall, destroying stuff, and then lugging it all down a flight of stairs into a trash can, and then having to empty that trash can into a giant dumpster. This was a big like hotel or something that was getting renovated, and each room had to be demolished, and there was dust everywhere, and wire and razor blades and drywall, and some of it still had to be torn away, and yeah, it was just something. Me and Chris tore that place apart. But I didn't get paid for all the days I worked there. The last day we got gypped. We got refused pay. The guy refused to pay us. Luckily, Chris, my buddy, said, if I know where your business is and where your properties are, you pay me for my labor, Chris said, or I am burning your properties down. I will find those wooden beam construction site where we shoveled ice all night, and I will burn it down. He said, I will find that little motel that's run down, and I will burn it down. You pay me or else. And the guy paid him. He gave me half of what he owed me, and then I never spoke to him again. I never want to work for a guy like that again, especially after this guy Chris just threatened to burn stuff down. That's a felony. I'm not any part of that. No, I just wanted a job and the work. I want to be on the books too. I mean, I've asked to be on the books, so I don't know what else is going on here, but I want to get paid. So, yeah, there's a lot of this going on. They do it to homeless people all the time. They'll go, pick them up, get the work done, and then refuse to pay them. It's a way for businesses to get free labor at the expense of somebody else. And so when people say, get a job, oh, he probably doesn't want to work, I laugh because I think to myself, a lot of these homeless people probably worked 20 hours for free in the last week. So they've actually worked more for less than most people. And a lot of these jobs are not simple, easy jobs where you sit at a desk answering a phone or a CEO where at a computer. No, like one job I did, I was tearing up a cellar. This was for the Fenway, but at a different location in Marlboro. So me and 3 other people were sent there with sledgehammers, pickaxes, small sledgehammers that I guess were to fixing cars, and told to break up the top cement layer of the basement so they can pour more cement down. So the first day we did that, but we found big boulders, solid rocks, big, underneath it. So we called him. He then said we had to remove those. So we tried to pickaxe and break the rocks, but you can't. You can't break. They were too solid. They were like granite. So I'm pretty sure they were granite. So at this point, we had to pick them up. But none of us were strong enough to pick them up by ourselves. So we'd have to pickaxe the rock away. Then we would have to grab 2 of us, each side of the rock, bring it outside, toss it. Then we would have to do the same thing. It took about a week to finish the whole cellar floor. It wasn't an easy job. Not only that, one of my coworkers was chain smoking. Every hour he said smoke break and smoked, and then smoke break, and the other guy would sit. I can't smoke every hour. I can't smoke that much. I'm like a 2-hour smoker when I smoked. Now I'm a no-hour smoker. Now it's maybe once a month, and pretty soon it'll be once never. Actually, right now it is once never. It was maybe 3 weeks ago was my last cigarette, something like that. And it was only a couple drags snuck. But anyways, so while this guy is on smoke break, I say, I don't need a cigarette, but I don't need to be lifting the sledgehammer if you guys are sitting down, smoking, relaxing. So I'm just going to shuffle around here trying to level out the floor. Because this was like the second day to last, and we were leveling things out and doing that. And it was a pain in the butt. So I'm just taking my time, just taking it slow, leveling it out while they take a break. They're smoking, relaxing. And he pulls out his phone and takes a footage of me and sends it to the boss. He starts laughing and goes, I told the boss that this is what you do for work, and I'm going to stick by it. I said, what? I spent 5 days smashing cement with you. I said, the boss has seen me smashing cement. I go, this is a break, so you're going to tell him that My break is how I work. What the hell's wrong with you, buddy? And he goes, oh, are you going to leave? I go, no, I'm not going to leave. I'm going to finish the job I was hired to do. And then I finished the job. I spoke to Mike, said, I don't think that it's a good idea for me to work. One of the other workers is trying to play games and he doesn't seem to want me on the crew, so I'm going to have to leave. And he said, yep, I see that. He sent me a message of you, but if he's on the phone taking a picture, it looks like he's sitting down. I kind of figure what's going on. I said, you do? He goes, yeah, he's probably on a break fucking around. I go, yep, that's exactly what was happening. He goes, yeah, but this is okay. He goes, if you need anything, let me know. And then I did. About a couple months later, I asked him if any more work. He told me no. He said, not at the moment. Come back later. But anyway, so that was some of how people take advantage of the homeless. And that's just some of my experiences, but I can go through a list of what I've seen other people experience too, like Chris. Chris got refused to pay as well. And I've seen several other people too. Like Kenny, he tiled the floor. I told them I could tile a floor. They didn't want me. They wanted Kenny and a hot girl. So they went. They said they were going to pay Kenny for the job. Kenny tiled. They then Kenny tiled the floor with them. Then they sent Kenny to get lunch. They had sex with his girlfriend, gave her money, and then Kenny went back. And I only know this because I was a little jealous that these people are getting a tiling job that Kenny doesn't want to tile and the girl doesn't want to tile. They just want money, and one of them's a pretty face. I actually have some skills of tiling and need the money as well. So I was just seeing how they were doing, and most of the guys were doing the work with Kenny while she was just talking. Then he left. I walked with him, came back, no big deal. Then Kenny and her got in a fight. They split up. She stayed with me for a minute and pulled out a wad of cash. Said, look what I got. If he just shut his mouth for 5 minutes, he would have saw that I had money. And I'm like, well, he was supposed to get his money. He was supposed to get paid for the work. You just had sex with them. And she goes, oh, well, yeah, I guess you don't want any either. And she stormed off. So there's a lot of this taking advantage of the homeless. I mean, there was a work crew right downtown Lowell working on a business, tiling a floor. They came to Dunkin' Donuts, picked up a homeless girl who's wicked pretty, her boyfriend, kept her boyfriend busy, promised to pay him, then threw his ass out to get food. Then when he came back, refused to pay him. They got in a big fight. Girl, him, everybody. He stormed off. She came out talking to me about how she has a wad of cash. And then she was saying, oh, yeah, they did this and this and this. And this. No, it was all sex. I could tell. I mean, it's not, you can tell. Plus, your clothing has changed. You just, no. It's very obvious. It doesn't take a genius to figure out what was going on there. But yeah, the homeless are like the number one people who are taken advantage of in society. And they work harder than just about any other individual you meet. You compare any homeless week with a CEO's week. And I guarantee you, it would be way, way worse to be the homeless work. I guarantee you his muscles are sorer, he's having to lift more, he's getting taken advantage more, he's getting paid less, and there's less opportunities. He has less time to eat, he doesn't get to eat, or something like that. Meanwhile, the CEO says that he's working super hard, harder than all the people at the bottom, yet he takes a 2-hour lunch, he's driving an expensive car, he's chatting on the phone with his wife, taking personal calls at work. Well, if you're at the top making all that big money, you don't need to take personal calls, do you? I mean, you're on the clock. Do that during your 2-hour lunch break. But this is what's going on. I'm not even kidding. There are 2-hour lunch breaks for CEOs now. I know that seems ridiculous. I figured it was like an hour, 30 minutes or something. Here, actually, let me give you another example. The companies I work for, the oil companies, the gas companies, stuff like that, we don't get a lunch break. We eat as we can. When there's a lull in the customers, we'll grab a cup of soup or a bite to eat. We don't have a scheduled lunch break, and we're not allowed to lock the door and close up to eat. So we literally have to eat in front of the customers. We have to have like a soup next to the register. Take a sip. Oh yeah, here, 50 on 2? No problem. There's your gas. Okay, take a sip. Oh, you want a pack of cigarettes? Sure. Okay. Oh, you want a beer? Yep, I'll ring that up. Okay, now I can have my soup. Oh, nope. Okay, yeah, what do you want? Okay, now I can have my, oh, nope. And it just goes like that for hours. Meanwhile, the people at the top who are supposed to be doing stuff like keeping the machines working aren't getting things working, aren't keeping things working, aren't doing a good job with trying to manage the company. I'm not talking about management either. I'm talking about CEOs, owners, and corporations. It's just not working. And then, so you got the people at the bottom getting no lunch break, and you got the people at the top getting 2-hour lunch breaks. That's kind of messed up. And the people at the top, most of them didn't earn that position. A lot of them were bought in by their parents. A lot of degrees are just daycares, adult daycares now. Colleges, I could easily spend enough time in college. I'm just never going to have the money to spend that much time in college. It would be a waste of money because I would have to go all the way through with it. I would have to continue until it's complete. Now, that could take anywhere from 2 years to 6 years. There's no way to know. So that's just not a possibility. But just about anybody can get a degree nowadays as long as they have the money to buy in. Because a lot of the schools and systems today that have changed since the 1970s are no longer what they used to be. They're just a profit. They're just a way to get money. And that's their main concern, these colleges. How do we make money? So education has been taking a back seat. And it's been getting easier and easier too, because more and more wealthy people want their kids to get a degree. And a lot of wealthy parents, their kids might not be that smart or that dedicated or that drawn. A lot of them do cocaine, they drive fast cars, they do stupid stuff. I mean, you really want to look at an example, look at Joe Biden's son. He made a bunch of mistakes like anybody else. But he's still doing a lot in the corporate district. He's still looked at, he still gets to keep his degree, all that. Anybody can really go through this process if they have the money. You need to be able to basically read, write, listen, pay attention, have dedication, and wait and go through all of it. Spend the whole time. Don't bail out. If you do that and you have the money to pay, eventually you'll get some type of degree. You will. And this isn't just my opinions. These are opinions of thousands of people who I've spoken to, researched, or went online to figure out if I thought college was right for me. I've spent the last, 15 years trying to figure out if college was right for me or not. And it is. If I had money and my health. And if my mother actually told me how to use, or if maybe she was lying again, I don't know. She said that part of my adoption agreement is that I can go to any college in Massachusetts for free as long as I get in. Okay, how do we do that? I asked my father. He gave me the same answer he always gives me. I don't know. I don't care. Go away. And the second part, go away, I've just ad-libbed. I've added, because I can tell from his eyes and the look that he does not want to deal with anything with his son. He does not want his son to be a better person than him. He does not want his son to succeed. No, because I am not his son. It's very clear from the way he looks, acts, treats, and speaks, as well as when other people do horrible things to me, he thinks it's okay. When other people do horrible things to me right in front of him, that maybe he loves too, he does nothing. If my nephew was calling me gay, nothing. If my mother was giving me Epicac extra, that's causing permanent stomach damage, we're talking full bottles. We're not talking about a cap because I ate a mushroom. We're talking about a full bottle as a punishment for something I said. That is wrong. And then years later, when I say that that's one of my problems with her, is that she keeps on poisoning me, she admits to it right in front of him and says, yes, I gave you extra Ipecac more than directed. What of it? And I turned to my family, my father, my sister, and my brother-in-law, and said, does anybody see something wrong here with giving a child more than the recommended dose of a medicine as a punishment, and how that could go downhill quick, and how that could have long-term consequences for the child? And of course, my sister, who does seem to be sane and kind of look at this as a full picture, clearly does know that that's wrong. So does her husband. He knows that that's wrong. But see, my father, he looks at me as a lesser being. I'm a lesser thing. I'm an ant. I'm a cockroach. So if his wife says that it's okay to poison me, then it must be okay. And that's why he said, nope, there's no problem with this. He thought it was okay that she poisoned me with Ipecac. Not a small amount, recommended dose. Not talking about like the recommended way to use Ipecac. I'm talking about giving full bottles where the point where it can cause permanent harm. Extra. The extra is the part that worries me. Ipecac back then, a little bit was really common for poisonings or getting sick. But giving a full bottle and extra as punishments like hot sauce, like okay, this is the way it was used on me. You know how parents, if a kid swears, they put hot sauce on the kid's tongue and mouth and say, yeah, you hot sauce. Well, I was given full bottles of Ipecac. I didn't get no hot sauce. I got Ipecac. Full bottles. And anybody I've spoken to this about and given the full information, full details, they fully understand that it's wrong. But see, my father doesn't understand it's wrong at the time, or maybe even now, because he looks at me like a lesser being, just like the Nazis looked at Jews as a lesser being. That's why the Nazis thought it was okay to torture and kill, even though they were Christian. The Nazis were Christians who believed in not murdering. Well, then why would they be killing a Jewish person? Because that's not a person. The Nazis looked at Jewish people as cockroaches and ants, somebody that was lesser. So all the rules that apply to your wife, your brother, your sister, your friend, all those people don't apply to the Jewish individual. You can kill him, you can rape him, you can study him, you can do whatever you want to that Jewish individual during World War II in Germany. And that's why it was allowed, even though a lot of these Nazis were perfectly good Christians, Catholics, that believed in not murdering. But murdering a Jewish person is okay because that's not a person. Well, that's the same thing with my father. He looks at me like a lesser person, like a cockroach. So when my mother does something really awful, like poisons me, and then she admits it right in front of him, and he even says, no, it was extra. So what? I gave you extra as a punishment. I gave you extra Ipecac. So what?